My guest is Bård Larsen. He is a historian from Oslo, Norway. He works for a think tank called Civita. Bård, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You are here for the first time in Armenia, ever.
I am.
And you came here on your own. You decided to come to take part in the commemoration ceremonies. You've written a lot about the Armenian Genocide. Why was it important for you to come?
It was important to come, obviously, because it was the 100-year commemoration. And when I had the opportunity to do so, I felt the time was actually to see what Armenia is about. For a few days, of course, I won't learn too much, but sure. Because I've been studying more ideology and politics than Armenian culture, I don't know much about it. So it's very interesting to come here.
You've had a crash course in Armenian culture too, I suspect.
Yeah, I did. Yesterday I was sunburned, and today I nearly froze to death. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yesterday you took part in the canonization service at the Holy See for the victims of the Armenian Genocide, and today you were up at Tzizernagapert, part of the official sort of delegation.
Yes.
You also took part in the two-day global conference that led up to April 24th. There were experts and scholars from all over the world. There was even a survivor from the Rwandan genocide. Tell me, how, in terms of content and in terms of message, how was the conference?
The conference was very good, but if I may be a bit critical,
sure.
I would say that you actually had two conferences. The first day was very good. It was about genocide, and it was about the overwhelming proof, both in terms of history, facts, and legal terms, that this was a genocide. And inside that paradigm, you had different ideas of, you know, as you should do in an academic conference. I would suggest, though, that the second day was more of a, maybe it's a bit harsh to say propaganda, but it was more of a declaration, you know, that there was a lot of people coming up, officials or not, saying different things. And I think the conference also had something that is different from a pure scientific conference, and that it had different agendas. Right. That was a bit difficult to differentiate.
Right, but you know, certainly not to justify, you know, as you're saying it, I'm thinking, you know, it was an opportunity. It was the 100th anniversary. The world's attention is on Armenia. You know, the major news networks from CNN to Euronews to BBC were covering the event. So perhaps certain people felt it was an opportunity or a platform to say those declarative statements, but nonetheless...
I absolutely sympathize with that. Yeah. But, you know, academics, they're always a bit cautious about how you mix things and what are you part of now. And I would, for instance, suggest that it became more and more an important issue, the idea of having laws against genocide denial. And that is in the liberal Western atmosphere. It's not something that is a part of the issue of if it was a genocide or not. And it turns out a bit illiberal for a lot of Western European academics.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, Hrant Dink, who was such a proponent for recognition and for some kind of reconciliation, he also was very much opposed to the criminalization of the Armenian Genocide. I want to talk a little bit about how you felt when you went to the Genocide Memorial the first time. You know, as somebody who is a European, you're Norwegian, studying the Armenian Genocide, studying a people that are quite foreign perhaps to you, and then coming and being there in that space, how was that for you?
Well, it was quite surprising, actually, because I've been working on genocide issues, the Armenian genocide mostly, but also Holocaust. I worked for the Holocaust Center in Oslo. And I've been around. I have been to the Auschwitz, and for me it was a different approach to it, because in Auschwitz I didn't cry, but I cried when I went to the Armenian memorial. And I think the reason is maybe the same why so many Armenians are have this so close to their hearts and makes them so angry, it is that it is a mix of the suffering behind, I mean, the obvious suffering in genocide, but that the perpetrator won't admit what they have done. And it's for me, I think that was so emotional for me that I was a bit furious and sad at the same time. So it, you know, it initiated some feelings. And I think this is basic psychology, actually. I mean, because a lot of people are saying, why are the Armenians obsessed?
Yeah, get over it.
The genocide,
yeah.
Get over it, move on, get friends with Turkey, come on. But, I mean, any human being will always ask for, you know, not only punishment, but also, you know, that the perpetrator admits what they've done. You can't have any dialogue with two people. One is a perpetrator, one is a victim, and the perpetrator doesn't admit what they've done. So this is basic psychology.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, we get that asked of us so many times, I can't even recall anymore. And, you know, I feel like we keep repeating ourselves, but perhaps this is the day that we need to repeat ourselves. You know, I am third generation. My grandparents were survivors. They were orphans from the genocide, and that's what I grew up on. That's what fed me and sustained me, was the stories that I heard. And I've passed that intuitively or, you know, accidentally or without really wanting to onto my own children. Yes. And it's a cycle that we need to break as a nation, because it, you know, it's infuriating to live like that for 100 years. Yeah. And as they say, that denial is the last stage of genocide. But what is left for the Armenian people to do if Turkey doesn't acknowledge it? Continue another 100 years in this cycle? Well,
I don't have any answer to that. It's a real challenge. But I mean, I think there is a movement here, you know, the political thing. That's hardcore real politics, you know. But I think there is a movement. I think a lot more people know about the Armenian genocide today.
Certainly today than they did, you know, 10 years ago or 50 years ago. But, you know, I was talking to one of your compatriots whose grandmother was a missionary, Bodil Bjorn, Jussi Fleming Bjorn. Yes. And he was saying that, you know, in the day, I mean, so many Scandinavian missionaries came to the aid of the Armenian people during the genocide. And he goes, everybody knew about it, but somehow they forgot. And like you said, politics and interests and strategic interests come to play. From that perspective, what could Armenia do to push forward this agenda so that it can move forward in the political realm?
It's a bit difficult, but when I talked about the conference, I think, you know, because I was talking about the three agendas that came up, maybe I would say that maybe you should play more hard on one card than all three cards. And that is genocide recognition. Because that is a clean-cut case. I mean, it's only politics. It's not law, it's not history, it's just about politics. Right. And what you have here is the most successful genocide in history. I mean, that is basically what it is. It's even different from the Holocaust. What happened was the perpetrators killed the Armenians and the other Christian groups in the Ottoman Empire. They destroyed their culture, and now they're denying it. And the politicians in the liberal Western Hemisphere, they're following the steps of Turkey. So this is basically a very good case for Armenia and Armenians to follow. And you have my support, at least.
Well, that's very good to know. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to Yerevan. Thank you for the work that you do and for this interview here today on our live broadcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest was historian Bård Larsen of the Civita think tank in Oslo, Norway.